All right, welcome everybody. It is Friday. It's a good day. It's not the best day of the week. John thinks it is, but not quite. It doesn't quite match Monday for the impact and the power. But everybody loves Friday, even though we have this dense fog thing happening. Man, I tell you what, this is just some nasty stuff. So if you're out driving this morning, this is a public service just for you. Okay, just roll down your window, turn up your radio. Just let everybody know you're coming, all right? We'll just keep that up for a little while. No, we won't. Okay. All right, John, we have breaking news.
Yes, wind breaking news. We have a...
You might say it's really hit the fan. Or the floor.
It literally hit the floor, yes.
All right, now, this comes from Gustin. Is it Gustin or Gustine? Gustin.
Well, you know what? I actually went, after we saw the AP story, I thought this story was so important that I needed to get on the ground coverage.
Yes.
Leaving no stone unturned.
Wow.
This is the Channel 8 news team out of Gustine.
Covering
the story live.
Are you kidding me?
Yeah, no. This is real.
And as you have so aptly put it, it's called the Poo Patrol. Okay. In case you're wondering what this is all about, shall we let everybody know first before we play this cut, or is it self-explanatory?
It's self-explanatory.
Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, let's go directly to videotape, which we don't have any, but that's okay. Here we go. It's probably best heard and not seen. If you know what I mean. So here we go.
In Gustine, Texas, population 457, what happens at the schoolhouse affects nearly everyone. And something happened Monday that's causing a big controversy in this small town.
I felt uncomfortable and I didn't want to do it. And it felt like they violated my privacy.
11-year-old Eliza Medina was one of about 24 elementary students rounded up. Boys in one room, girls in another. She says they were ordered
to pull down their pants and check them to see if they could find anything.
I said I didn't want to, but I had to because all the kids had to.
I was furious. I mean, I was furious.
Eliza's mom explains.
They've been finding poop on the gym floor.
She can imagine the frustration, but says even for feces on the floor, you don't partially strip search a group of students to find the culprit.
If you can't do your job, or if you don't know what you're doing, then you need to be fired. You do not need to be here.
The superintendent.
Maybe we could find a much better way to help solve this.
Acknowledges that making kids drop their pants to determine who caused a mess.
That would be too far. That's not appropriate, and we would not condone that.
Wow.
And so you would take disciplinary action.
But Ken Baugh says his understanding so far is that the children were told to lower their pants just a little. Eliza Medina insists it was more than that.
To right there, to where your butt is.
And her mother says even a little is too much.
I mean, wrong is wrong.
The superintendent is hoping to have his investigation into all of this wrapped up by tomorrow after he hears from all parties involved. He may yet get an earful, though, Thursday night. Some angry parents already planning to show up to the school board meeting to demand that someone be held accountable. In Gustine, Jason Wheeler, Channel 8 News.
All right.
Well, what are they going to do when they find the poor kid? We got a mark over here on aisle 3.
Well, obviously the only way to handle this, okay, to ensure the privacy of these precious little ones, okay, all right, is to do a DNA test. I mean, obviously there's DNA material laying there on the floor.
A poo-opsy?
Sometimes, you think that we make this stuff up. We don't make this stuff up. This is really happening in America, ladies and gentlemen. As a matter of fact, the two North Texas school administrators are actually on leave after they did what they did. So I guess I would ask you, what do you think? If this was your child, okay, if this was your child, your precious little... What? I think they're fifth graders, right?
Well, the girl was 11, so...
Okay, yeah, about fifth graders, fourth, fifth graders. All right, so if this was your child, a little boy or a little girl, And this event happened. This, somebody obviously was playing a prank, and
Well, how do you know it was a prank?
the stupid thing the stupid things that kids do. Kids do dumb things. I mean,
okay, now I have been a teacher,
and you have to.
I
remember,
have had this experience. I literally have dealt with this.
Have you really?
Not with fifth graders, with high schoolers.
Okay. And what was your solution?
Oh, Tomikawa High School. Yeah, we were. It was one of my first days.
And this is in Japan.
This is in Japan.
All right.
And there's all these high schoolers, and they're gathered, and it's like it literally is my first time going to teach this class, which I learned to fear. And I'm wrong; it's not Tomikawa; it was Urakawa. Okay. Anyway, so we go to class, and I'm getting all prepped. I'm talking with the new teacher, whose English is marginal, even though he's the English teacher. And
okay, all right.
I'm kind of getting the. I'm starting to kind of realize this is the not so good high school.
Okay.
So you kind of have a tier system. You have your good high school, which was my favorite high school, which was Shizuna Koko.
Right.
And all the kids there really want to learn. They're engaged. Not all, but most of them do. And then you go to I have other schools, Biratori, for example. It was just a kind of okay. Now this is the bottom tier high school. This is the kids that just want to work the earth sort of situation. They want to train their horses or grow rice or whatever it is that they do.
They don't want to be there.
They don't want to be at school.
Right,
that's for
right,
sure.
Right, yeah.
So I get there and hear all this rowdy nonsense. I'm like, wow, this is like some kind of party going on. And we walk into the classroom. Everybody, all the kids are in a big circle. There's no teacher present. One little female teacher makes it through the crack in the kids and comes rushing out and whispers something really quickly to the other teachers in the hallway. And they dash off running like there's an emergency. So I'm just sitting there dumbfounded. And they come back with like little rubber gloves and a little dustpan. And apparently one of the male students had really dropped his drawers and done his business right in the middle of the classroom floor in full view of everybody.
Obviously as a protest.
Yes.
Of some sort.
I'm not sure if it was a direct protest to me or what. All I could say is that we had a delayed class scheduled that morning. So yeah, it's definitely something teachers have to do with. But I can't say no one was required to drop their drawers.
Now, what I want to know is what would the punishment be for the little boy or little girl, heaven forbid, who did that? And of course there'd have to be a trial because there'd have to be that have to. I mean, was it deliberate? What was it an intentional pooping or was it a
oopsie poopsie?
Was it mitigated, deliberate pooping? Was it, accidental, couldn't wait, tried to get to but I couldn't make it type thing?
A second degree pooping.
Yeah. What was it? Anyway, we're up against a break, and give us a call if you.
Well, we did get one call.
Okay. Well, hold on. We'll get to that in a minute. I want to save the suspense when we get back. Hey, it's Talk Back, and it's Friday, baby. Yeah, we're all kind of buried in this fog. It's just weird. It feels like it's London or Seattle or something. I don't know. But here we are. So what was the response?
Well, we had a regular listener call in upset that we were laughing at that particular story.
Why?
He felt that it was something that we should be scared of, that we should be more, I guess, dour about. I mean, obviously, this is an intrusion on privacy. Literally. Okay. You don't get more private than your butt, right? And I dare anybody to try to talk about this without laughing. It's not easy.
All right. Allow me to explain something, okay? And this is something that it's kind of like an inside baseball thing, all right?
Okay.
All right. Now, every radio announcer who has ever lived, all right, especially, well, I'll just make it a blanket statement, and I would challenge every radio announcer who I've ever known. I've been in radio for over 40 years, and I've met a lot of people who've been in radio, and every single one of us, whether consciously or subconsciously, subscribes to the following motto, okay, or life verse, if you will. You're only young once, but you could be immature forever. Okay, that is what we do. I
Peter,
mean,
what is that on the floor?
I'm not looking. Wasn't me. Anyway, so 721.
Let's check.
Let's
check.
let's get that DNA thing going, man.
You know what's funny? But we actually had this experience at my home this week.
Oh no!
I kid you not.
We're hoping to get off of this subject.
Okay, so my wife, she's at school to be a nurse practitioner, and she comes home, and we're like, luckily dinner had just finished, and she's like, "Hey, everybody, I'm going to need some poo to take with me to school tomorrow."
Are you joking?
I kid you not.
Oh my heavenly days!
So apparently they're doing some kind of test, maybe a DNA test. I don't know. I didn't get into the specifics.
There are easier ways of getting DNA, you know.
We all look over at the baby. Isaiah's over there munching on whatever it is. Like, look, we have to look at his poo anyway. So when that guy explodes, you'll know. You go get your kit and you do your stuff, and I'll be grateful to not have to change that diaper. So, because Isaiah, by the way, I mean, it's like wrestling. It's a fight. He tries to do backflips every time. So anyway, we're all waiting. Time's running out. Gets pretty close to bedtime, and we're all like, "So is he gonna go?" He usually goes right about now. So he doesn't go.
The poo watch is on. Yes.
So anyway, he goes to bed, and we have a poo emergency because Ruth and I are looking at each other. I'm like, "Don't look at me. This is your project. I am not a contributor."
This award-winning radio program is brought to you in part by
the
Charmin.
letter P and the number 2.
Okay, radio professionals once again. 721-1290 is our number, 1-800-568-5309. Yes, in case you're wondering, we do have a really good time on this show. Okay, every now and then we'll get a topic that tickles our funny bone, and somebody will say something, and he'll look at me, and I'll look at him, and we'll start giggling uncontrollably, and that's what happened there. So everything's fine now. Let's get Rick on the line. Good morning, Rick.
Yeah, I was going to say, you guys really went into the toilet on this one.
I know. We really wiped out on that one.
But, after a tough week, it's nice to sit down and have a good laugh in the morning, and you guys sure hit it today.
Well, thank you. I know we have covered some very serious topics. I mean, it was the Montana World Affairs Council on the radio for the whole week.
I know.
So it was amazing.
That was great. Well, I know when I went to college out in Ashland, Oregon, I was with the swim team, and every once in a while we had the phantom pooper do it on top of the diving board.
Is that like a Caddyshack moment?
Yeah, you might say that.
Somebody slips a butterfinger in the pool?
Yeah.
Anyway, okay. Well, there you go. Well, wait, thank you, Rick, for bringing us back down to earth. We appreciate it.
Take care, guys.
Take care, man. Thanks for the call. That was a little earthy humor there, ladies and gentlemen. So if you were offended by that, too bad. So, all right, we're moving right along, though. So I've got all your stuff here laid out. So.
Yeah, we got 7 minutes.
Yes.
Let's play this clip. Okay, so yesterday I played actually 2 days ago, I believe, played a clip of Eric Schultz, who is the White House deputy press secretary.
Right, yeah.
And he was explaining how the Taliban were no longer considered terrorists. Now, if you pronounce it Taliban, or Taliban,
yeah.
Doesn't matter.
Taliban.
Everybody
sounds like a candy.
It also sounds like a hippie tourist. Anyway, so the Taliban, whatever, were considered not a terrorist group, but were considered a armed insurgency, I believe, is the term that they were using. This is all relative to the Jordanian situation right now, where ISIS is holding one of their people captive, and they want to have a hostage exchange with this terrorist that killed 60 people, or at least tried to. So anyway, now the boss is back in town. Josh Earnest, who is the real press secretary, is there, and John Carl from ABC, who asked the question the other day, gives this pretty much the same question to him, just wants to get a definition, make sure we know what's going on. And this is the waffling definition of terror that Josh Earnest offers.
Okay, so here we go. That was the flunky, and this is the boss. Here we go.
Yesterday, it was said that the United States government, that the White House does not consider the Taliban to be a terrorist organization. I'm just wondering how that's consistent with what I believe is the designation that the Treasury Department has on its list of specially designated terrorist groups, which clearly list the Taliban. So does the administration consider the Taliban a terrorist organization or not?
John, the reason that the Taliban is listed on this description that you have put forward here is for two reasons. One is they do carry out tactics that are akin to terrorism. They do pursue terror attacks in an effort to try to advance their agenda. And by designating them in the way that you have described, does allow the United States to put in place some financial sanctions against the leaders of that organization in a way that's been beneficial to our ongoing efforts against the Taliban. Now, what's also true, though, John, is that it's important to draw a distinction between the Taliban and Al-Qaeda. The Taliban has resorted to terror tactics, but those terror tactics have principally been focused on Afghanistan. Now, the reason that we're concerned about that is there obviously are a significant number of American personnel, including American military personnel in Afghanistan, that are in harm's way. The Taliban is a very dangerous organization, and what the president has pursued is a clear strategy for building up the central government of Afghanistan and the Afghan security forces so that they could be responsible for security in their own country and take the fight to the Taliban. That, however, is different than the strategy that we have pursued against Al-Qaeda. Al-Qaeda is a terrorist organization that has aspirations that extend beyond just the border between Afghanistan and Pakistan. Al-Qaeda and their affiliates around the globe have sought to carry out terror attacks against Americans and American interests all around the globe. And that explains the difference in classification. But there is no doubt that both of these organizations are dangerous and have drawn our attention. After all, there are a large number of Taliban fighters that have been taken off the battlefield thanks to U.S. efforts and thanks to the courage and bravery of our servicemen and women.
So if I'm hearing you correctly, you're saying that the Taliban engages in, quote, tactics akin to terrorism, but you don't actually consider them a terrorist group.
They have a different classification. They have a classification that does allow us to pursue financial sanctions against them that have succeeded in limiting their capability, that have been effective. And that is different than an organization like Al-Qaeda that has a much broader global aspiration to carry out acts of violence and acts of terror against Americans and American interests.
Okay, there you go. Basically, let me explain to you what's really going on here.
All right, I can't wait.
Obviously, there are some differences between Al-Qaeda and the Taliban. All right, I'll come out and say that. But they are not significant enough for the U.S. to be behaving this way. The U.S. wants to have both the high ground and have the political opportunity that was afforded by the Bergdahl Exchange. Okay, they want to be able to say, when we have a group that threatens and kills innocents, and that does so in a terrorist manner, which he even agreed. They do terrorist acts, right? When we're dealing with a group like that, and one of our citizens is in their control, then they are not a terrorist group for the purposes of a prisoner exchange. But when Jordan and Japan want to do that with a group like ISIS, it is a terrorist organization, and you shouldn't do that. We can do it, but you shouldn't do it.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Does anybody around here ever remember a guy named Harry Truman?
I don't remember him.
He was the president. Of course, when Franklin Delano Roosevelt died, he inherited the presidency, and then he won on his own. And he was a plain speaker. He was absolutely. He would become livid when people would do exactly what these folks are doing, playing with words so we don't offend. Or da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. He was a plain speaker, and I miss that. I miss calling a spade a spade. If a person is a terrorist, they're a terrorist. Treat them like a terrorist. You know, don't namby-pamby and dance around all this nonsense. Just
not very well timed. you could say, current event that just popped up this week. So when we exchanged prisoners for when basically we had 5 Taliban members that we sent back to Qatar in exchange for Bo Bergdahl. Okay, they're currently being watched. Well, according to this report, and this is out of Fox, but I'll read it real quick. Quote, a U.S. official confirmed to Fox News that the former Guantanamo prisoner has been intercepted making phone calls to the Taliban.
Wow.
The development comes amid rising concerns over former Guantanamo detainees returning to the battlefield and over the nature of the Bergdahl Taliban trade itself last year, which was negotiated with the involvement of the Qatari government. Despite the apparent outreach by one of the traded prisoners, all 5 of the so-called Taliban 5 are still accounted for in Qatar. A senior U.S. official told Fox News, quote, there are no indications that they are a risk right now, another defense official said. In an interview with Fox News, with the Sean Hannity show on Thursday, Pentagon spokesman Rear Admiral John Kirby said, quote, first of all, we take all allegations of re-engagement very seriously. There are different ways of considering re-engagement. It doesn't necessarily mean return to the battlefield. We do take it all seriously. We have a good security partnership with the government of Qatar. They have provided assurances, and I can tell you we are very comfortable at the Defense Department that we can mitigate the threat that could be posed by any one of the individuals in terms of terrorist activity. End quote.
Okay. Well, there you go.
Okay, so we exchange terrorists. The terrorists try to go back to being terrorists. Don't look at us, look at Jordan. They're the ones making the decision now.
Okay, we're going to take a little break. When we come back, we have a special guest. We're going to shift gears completely and talk about what's going on in Helena right now. We have if you will, a lobbyist, right?
Well, thanks for calling KGVO. This is John.
He's Mark Meckler, and he's with the Convention of States. And we are going to...
So Senate SJ7 will be on the docket next week, February 3rd, and it's the Convention of States resolution.
Right.
Basically, should Montana join with other states to have a constitutional convention? Mark Meckler is in the state, or I believe he has been recently, to try to urge legislators to support this measure. If you do support such a measure or don't, give us a call at 721-1290. We'll have Mark Meckler from the Convention of States Project on the air.
Well, I want to learn more about this, so I'm looking forward to this visit. This is going to be great, and so we'll take a quick break and come right back with more of Talk Back after this timeout. This is Talk Back for 721-1290 is our number, 1-800-568-5309. You're also welcome to make your comments known on our Facebook page. That's John King over there, and I'm Peter Christian. Not quite sure which one of us is number 1 or number 2 today.
I'll be number 2. How's that?
Anyway, but we have a special guest waiting on the phone. Now, you've got his bio right
That's
there.
right. Today we'll be speaking with Mark Meckler. I'm going to read from his bio that I got off of the Convention of States website.
All right.
So, here you go. Mark, blush all you want. Okay. Mark is one of the nation's most effective grassroots activists after co-founding and being the national coordinator of the Tea Party Patriots. He founded Citizens for Self-Governance to revolutionize American government. Founded in February 2012, this grassroots initiative expands and directs the ever-growing bipartisan self-governance movement. Mark appeared regularly on wide variety of television outlets, including MSNBC, ABC, NBC, Fox News, CNN, Bloomberg, Fox Business, and the BBC, not to mention KGVO News in Missoula, Montana, the most extraordinary... Oh, wait, that's not part of this bio. He is the author of The Tea Party Patriots, The Second American Revolution, and writes regularly on Breitbart, The American Spectator, and selfgovern.com. He is also an attorney who specializes in internet privacy law. Mark and his wife live in Northern California with their 2 teenage children, where they share the love of the outdoors, mountain biking, soccer, and horses.
Very cool. So. Hey, Mark, good morning and welcome to Montana, sir. How are you?
I am fantastic. I realize we need one correction to the bio. My young son is 19 now, and he is off at boot camp for the United States Marines. So
wow. Well, I'm sure they play soccer at boot camp.
Maybe. I'm not
Probably not. Probably not.
The letters don't sound anything like that.
If they do, they probably don't deflate the ball.
Yeah. All right. Now, let's talk about the reason you're here in Montana, Mark. What's going on with our Montana legislators? What are you asking them to support?
Well, what we're asking them to support is what's called the Convention of States resolution, and that's a resolution asking Montana to call for a convention of states for proposing amendments to the Constitution. That's under Article 5, the second clause of Article 5 of the United States Constitution. And the reason is everybody acknowledges, and when I say everybody, I mean this is bipartisan. 66% of the American public say that the federal government is too big and it's out of control. And if you ask anybody, either side of the aisle, they'll tell you they don't believe that Washington, D.C. will ever restrain itself. We've got no history of Washington, D.C. ever imposing restraint on itself. The only way we can do it is by calling a convention, and the purpose of the convention specifically, according to the application, is to propose scope and jurisdiction restraints and fiscal restraints on the federal government.
So, okay, one of the things that often comes up when we talk about a constitutional convention is there's a perceived risk that the Constitutional Convention ends up rewriting or changing large sections of our U.S. Constitution in a way that could be contrary to what many of the supporters of the Constitutional Convention are saying will happen.
Yeah, that's what we would call the runaway argument, and it is made by a small fringe of folks on the right, on conservatives. And it's important why I say small fringe, because if you look at the people who are in support of the Article 5 movement today in America, it is the vast, vast majority of prominent conservatives in the United States of America. It goes from Rush Limbaugh, Mark Levin, Glenn Beck, Sean Hannity, Senator Tom Coburn, Governor Bobby Jindal. I mean, on and on and on and on the list of prominent conservative thinkers, lawyers like Robbie George at Princeton and Randy Barnett at Georgetown Center for the Constitution. I've personally spoken with Ed Meese about this, and Attorney General Meese is in favor of doing this. So the vast majority of conservatives believe there is no danger of a runaway, and you can actually go on our website at conventionofstates.com. You can look at all these people who signed something called the Jefferson Statement saying there is no danger of a runaway convention.
All right, now let me ask you this, Mark. If Montana signs on to this, all right, where would we be in the list? I mean, how many do you have so far, and how many do you need, and what are the realistic expectations that this is going to work? And another question, is there a time deadline involved here, or are you basically just going to take all the time it needs?
Wow, you're going to get a Catherine point for four questions in one sentence there.
Well, let's go in reverse. There is no time deadline. It takes as long as it takes.
Okay.
But my realistic expectation is that we're going to get it done in 2015.
Really?
2014 was an extraordinary electoral year. It lined up now. There are 31 legislatures across the country that are controlled by Republicans on both sides of the House. That's if you include Nebraska, which is unicameral. So I think we can get it done. The application has already, last year, been passed in Georgia, Florida, and Alaska. As of yesterday, it is pending in 16 states across the country, including Montana. I expect that within the next 6 weeks, that will be pending in roughly 34 to 35 states. And the threshold number is 34 total. So we need an additional 31 states in this legislative session, and I expect we're going to get that.
Let me ask you this. One of the things that is interesting, by the way, I don't know if you know about this program. We speak with Rob Nadelson, who's a lawyer, a former lawyer and law professor and current constitutional scholar that talks about the Constitutional Convention fairly regularly on our program. One of the things that that has come up in our discussions is that at the Constitutional Convention, the states kind of get to decide who they would send individually. They each kind of can choose their own system, as far as I understand.
Their own delegates, right?
And I was wondering if you knew what the Montana plan is. How would this work on the ground mechanically for the state of Montana?
The answer is we don't know. It's be up to Montana, but I do know that companion legislation or subsequent legislation is being talked about and debated right now among some folks there in Montana, setting forth how you would choose your delegates. It's really up to the legislature to decide how those delegates are chosen, but a lot of the states are in advance sitting down and making decisions within the states about how they would do that.
So, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, we're up against a break, Mark, and one of my questions, and every time I talk about this with people, the fear says, okay, well, yeah, it's just a thinly veiled disguise to do away with the Second Amendment. All right? I hear that every time we talk about this. And I would like you to address that specifically. And we'll come back in a moment. I know John has questions. We have 2 lines open. If you'd like to visit with Mark Meckler, give us a call. The lines are open, 721-1290. We'll be right back. We're back on Talkback. John King's over there. I'm Peter Christian. Joining us on the phone, Mark Meckler, who is with us from the Convention of States. And I asked you a question, Mark, before the break, dealing specifically with the warning that we hear over and over again. If you do this, you open this door, somebody's going to come in there and try to rewrite the Second Amendment. So how do you respond to that?
Well, first of all, I'll respond technically, legally, which is to say that our application only allows discussion of things which would restrict the scope, power, and jurisdiction of the federal government. Now, of course, doing away with or limiting the Second Amendment increases the scope, power, and jurisdiction of the Second Amendment, so it's just simply not available. I think it's also really important to note, if you go to our website at conventionofstates.com, and if you look at what's called the Jefferson Statement there, you'll see one of the signatories on the Jefferson Statement is a guy by the name of Charles Cooper, and Chuck is actually the outside constitutional litigator for the NRA, and I seriously doubt that Chuck would have signed on to be part of our legal board of reference if he had any indication, any fear whatsoever the Second Amendment would be under attack. And in fact, in a convention by our calling, we would have an opportunity to strengthen the Second Amendment if we chose to. In other words, we could say, no, really, we actually mean that the government shall not infringe on the right to keep and bear arms.
Okay. Let's get we have a caller. Marilyn, you're on with Mark Meckler. Go ahead.
Yes, I'm definitely for this, and I got several things to say. One mistake that people keep doing, and I noticed John did it 3 different times, they keep they keep calling it convention or constitutional convention, and it is not. We need to call it a convention of the states. That would eliminate a lot of the confusion right there. And second thing, in the list of people that are backing this, I can't remember that he mentioned Mark Levin, and Mark Levin has written a book on it called The Liberty Amendments, and I've got it, and I've read it several times and have underlined and highlighted it. And there's quite a few different things, like the federal spending that's going on, that they're not going to control themselves, and the lifetime appointments of the Supreme Court, that would be something that they could undo. And there's quite a few things, like you said, strengthening our Second Amendment instead of they've been infringing on it for years. I mean, there's a whole host of things where we have got to take control back from our federal government, and this would be a way to do it. And in Mark's book, it talks about how the founders, they knew this was going to happen. They knew these guys would abuse their power, and this is a way to get it back.
Okay, Marilyn, thanks.
Yeah.
Thanks for your call. So
I'll take that criticism. I think she's right about correcting me on that. Let me read for you, Mark, a statement from one of our other listeners on Facebook, and it's one that I've heard often from Elena. But here she is with this position again, and I would like to get your response to it. She says, quote, "If Congress is ignoring the Constitution now, why should it abide by any new amendments? Again, I wouldn't agree to anything that George Soros supports. Here are the arguments against the con. Let's call it what it is." Delegates, anyway, and then she publishes something from Publius Hulda, delegates to an Article 5 convention can't be controlled by states. But if you could respond to the 2 first points. First, if the government is already breaking the Constitution, as many have claimed, why would it abide by these amendments? And second, there are prominent people from the other side of the aisle, I assume from you, since you're a member of the Tea Party apparently, that would also advocate for a convention of states. So how do you mix the two safely to get your political ideology across?
Sure, and actually I'm going to take it in reverse if you don't mind. I'm going to start with the third point. You mentioned a blogger that comes up regularly by the name of Publius Hulda.
Well, this is something that a local listener, Elena, often references.
She references. I just want to throw this out there because that name gets thrown out all the time. This is an anonymous blogger who claims some kind of credentials, who will not name who she is, and so basically you put that person up against guys like Rob Nadelson and Randy Barnett and Mike Barrett. I just think it's irrelevant. So if that's what you're reading, you don't actually have a real source, is number one. And she is one of the people who constantly mentions people like George Soros. And I will say, there are people on the left who would like to use the mechanism of an Article 5 convention to further their agenda. I would also say not a single one of them supports the Convention of States initiative, and they don't because the things that they would want to do are not available under our application. And if they did indeed believe this is a way to subvert the Constitution, they would be supporting our application, but they don't.
Let me ask you this, Mark, because I think that you run a risk in the way that the Convention of States has been talked about. I get this feeling that there's a sort of animus, Republicans versus Democrats, or Tea Party versus Liberal, or whatever you want to say, animus, and that, you know, there's a lot of states. I mean, anyone that's looked at the electoral map sees a big map of red with, you know, a few blue on the fringe states, right? You've got your coastal blue, and you've got a big chunk of red. So obviously the red states outnumber the blue. But it seems to me if you're going to have a Convention of States project that is that the United States people can get behind, it's got to be on an issue that really doesn't ruffle feathers that much for right or left, that both the right and the left can kind of get together on and say, hey, we're doing this as the people. We feel that we've lost power and we want to get it back. And these are the issues that we can agree on.
No, you're 100% correct, and that's why our application is drafted the way it is. First of all, remember, we've now introduced in places like New Jersey, Massachusetts, Virginia, and we're going to a floor vote in Virginia next week where it looks like we're likely to pass. And so these are swing states. Some are blue, some are swing states, so it's not a red state thing. And the reason it's really not a red state thing is the fundamental premise of Convention of States is take the power away from the federal government and give it back to the people and the states. And when I meet with legislators all around the country like I do, it doesn't really matter to me whether I'm talking to a Democrat or a Republican. I'm looking that person in the eye and I'm saying, look, I trust you more than I trust Washington, D.C. to do what's right for your state. And so whether I'm there in Montana, I'm talking to a Democrat, I could be talking to the governor's staff. I did have a conversation with someone on the governor's staff. My point is, I want the state of Montana to have as much power and as much money as it can, and to use that on behalf of the taxpayers of Montana.
Okay, and
so it's not a partisan issue, and 66% of the American public says the federal government is too big and is out of control. So again, that's not a partisan issue.
Okay, we're going to take a break, and Eric is waiting to visit with you as well. Mark Meckler's on the phone. We do have one line open, and we'll be right back after this timeout. Hey, it's Talk Back, and it's Friday, and we're visiting with Mark Meckler. And one thing that John brought up is that Elena, her first question probably wasn't really addressed by Mark about whether or not the folks who don't obey the Constitution now, why should they even care if it's amended? So go ahead.
Well, there's a few answers to that. Number one, I think, is most interesting, and I'd call it controversial when you first hear it, which is, as a conservative, it's amazing for me to say this, but mostly they do obey the Constitution. It's just that we have two constitutions in America today. We have the one that's under glass there at the Library of Congress that we all know and love, carry around in our pocket constitutions. And then we have the one that's been interpreted by the Supreme Court over the last 100 years. Those are completely different documents. And government, by and large, lives under the second one, the latter one, the one as interpreted by the Supreme Court. It gives the federal government broad and sweeping powers, things that the founders never imagined. So what we're trying to do is to make those two documents the same. We're trying to get into a convention, and if I was to describe it in like one amendment, it's a no really amendment. Like, no, the founders really meant what they said. And we're trying to stuff the Supreme Court in the box and take it back to the original Constitution. Now, there are exceptions, I think, where the President and Congress actually just boldly violate the Constitution, but mostly they follow it under things like the Commerce Clause as interpreted by the Supreme Court. So our job is to redefine the rules to take all this power away that the Supreme Court has given to the federal government. The second reason is largely political. A movement of 38 states to ratify an amendment to the Constitution literally takes a political will that is so large it's never been seen in our lifetimes in America, and politicians, by and large, are not leaders, most of them. There are some good ones there, but mostly they're followers, and they will follow the public will when millions and millions of people have said, we're going to amend the Constitution to restrain your powers. They're scared of the people when the people rise up.
Okay, let's get Eric on the line. Eric, you've got 1 minute to make your point. Please go ahead, sir.
Yeah, the problem with your analogy is that there is only one Constitution, not two, and what they're doing is setting up a lie to follow. But in one of the Federalist Papers, I think 28, Hamilton stated that it is the job of the states and local public servants to obey their oaths and stay federal abuses when and if they come. And this isn't being done. One example, One only has to look at when a gun store calls for a background check on you to the ATF or FBI, and this is outside of due process of law, and they can keep you from buying a firearm. Why do you think that state and local public servants will change their lying colors in the form of a state constitution when right now they're working in collusion with the federal government? Thanks.
Okay, thanks for the call. So we have about 30 seconds. Mark, you can hit the top of the trees, and then we'll get into it later at the top of the hour. Go ahead.
Sure. Well, Eric and I just disagree about the Constitution, and I'm just going to say, as a lawyer, he's just wrong. We do live under the Constitution as interpreted by the Supreme Court. That's just a fact on the ground. It's not an opinion. And so governments behave according to the strictures imposed on them by the Supreme Court. Now, to be fair, that's not something that the federal government ever intended. That's not what the founders intended when they set it up. They didn't expect the Supreme Court to be doing all this judicial review of the Constitution. But the fact is, that's what government operates under. That's the rule set.
Okay, and we will take a break, and Mark Meckler is going to stay with us till about 9:30. So, Craig, if you don't mind holding, I'm sorry about that, but we have to take this break, and we will be right back after the top of the hour news. Okay, we're back. Hour number 2 underway. John King's over there. I'm Peter Christian. Joining us on the phone, he's in Helena right now. Mark Meckler with
Actually, he's in California, but he's coming. He was in Helena last week.
Okay,
and is coming back, I believe. Is that right, Mark?
Wow.
Yeah, I'll be back there next week, probably Monday and Tuesday.
Fantastic.
Wow. Are you flying around with some rich bureaucrats from Washington, D.C.? I mean, how do you afford all these trips?
Only if the rich bureaucrats ride horses, then maybe.
Okay. All right. I was thinking maybe there's room in Nancy Pelosi's plane for you. Right. Anyway, but we do have a listener who's been waiting all the way through the break to visit with you. Craig, first of all, thank you for your patience, and good morning. You're on with Mark.
Hey, good morning, Mark. So the thought of this convention is both frightening and exciting. But the odds of the citizens regaining control of their constitution or anything, I think, are slim. And for our protection, you've got a couple of sharp gals there on that call in, like Catherine and Candy, and we could send one of them smart ladies along with you. Maybe they could help keep those guys in tow.
Possibly.
Yeah, it is a mess, It's frightening what is going to happen if we don't have one. It's frightening what's going to happen if we do have one. But that's it.
All right, Craig. Thanks for the call. So, Mark, what do you think about that? It's both frightening and exciting.
I think a lot of people share Craig's feelings about it, and I think the more time you spend in it, the more the excitement takes over and the fear goes away. People are scared. I get that people are scared, but we can't let fear stop us. I mean, imagine if the Patriots back in the Revolution that were scared, which is probably most of them, right? Imagine if they had decided not to act because they were scared. They took far greater risks than we're taking now, and they moved forward. And remember, only 30% of folks were patriots that actually supported the revolution, and they got it done. And we're going to get it done, and there's really nothing to be scared of. And let me give you the bottom line reason why. I'm a math guy, right? The numbers don't lie if you look at the real numbers. Anything that comes out of that convention takes 38 states to ratify. It's a big number, right? So somebody mentioned it's got to be kind of a down-the-middle idea. It's going to be things like term limits and balanced budget amendment, single subject amendment. Like you guys have a single subject thing there in Montana. A bill can only contain one subject. These are things that the vast majority of Americans support, term limits for Supreme Court justices. And so those are the kind of things that are going to come out of convention. They're not going to be scary stuff. And even if something scary came out, 38 states have to approve. It's a super high bar. And if you flip the math around, only 13 states can stop anything. And it's really just one house in each of 13 states. So I don't know about you guys, but I know in the 13 most conservative states in America, in one house, guys like you working and me and Rush and Mark Levin and Sean Hannity and Glenn Beck and all the great conservatives in America, we could stop anything we would want to stop in one house in 13 states. And if you don't believe that, then we shouldn't even be paying attention to politics. I should retire, go home, and hang out with my kids and my horse.
All right, let's get go ahead.
I wanted to read. This is a response since you were talking about Publius Hulda. I figured I'd throw the mysterious individual a bone and respond with Elena's quote here. She says, "No matter who Hulda is, her arguments make sense. By the way, Nadelson was so sure about CI 75, but the Supremes threw it out. That'd be the Montana Supreme Court. So CI 75 was a bill. It was a little bit before my political
something to do
time.
with tax. Something to do with taxes.
It dealt with taxes here in the state of Montana and kind of a bar on increasing them, I believe, without a public vote or a popular vote. So, anyway, what do you say? Do you think that Hulda's arguments make sense or not? I guess.
No, I don't think they make sense, and they don't hold up based on history, and they don't hold up based on reality. And again, anybody that's not willing to show their face in public, I'm just going to question that. And even if you said they were somehow equal to all these great constitutional scholars we've named, I mean, people who like Rob Nadelson, who you guys know really well, who Montanans know really well, who would tell you that the things that Publius Hulda say are not true, they don't make sense in the light of history. And she's got to face off against people like Nadelson and Mike Ferris and all these other great constitutional scholars, David Rivkin, Randy Barnett, Robbie George. She can't hold a candle to any of these people, and she's not willing to come out in public and say these things. And I believe it's because she's not who she says she is. She's a fraud.
All right.
All right. I looked at this. The Montana voter approval for tax increases is what CI 75 was all about.
Kind of close to
what
I
you look very good. Very good.
All right.
So let's get to Alan. Alan, you're on Talk Back with Mark Meckler. Go ahead.
Yeah, good morning, Mark. I've got some questions, technical questions, I guess you'd call them. Will each state have the same number of delegates, or will they be proportioned according to the size of the population of the state?
Sure, so the way that works is each state gets one vote. That's our history. That's every convention we've ever held. So it's one state, one vote, and if it wasn't, small states would just never participate. So it's one state, one vote, but every state, in true Federalist fashion, will send as many delegates as they like. So from California, I'm sure
it's just one vote, though, for each state.
A whole busload of crazy people from
Go ahead, Alan.
Yeah, and where will this convention be held? Has that been set up, or any idea yet?
No, I think that's a great question. So Congress has one role in this whole thing, and it's a ministerial role, and the Constitution says that when 34 states file the application, Congress sets the time and place. Now, here's my guess, and I'd put money on it. Congress will call the place as Washington, D.C. And all the delegates, all the folks I've talked to in the states, all the legislators say what they'll do, and I support this, is they'll convene in Washington, D.C. for 1 hour, and then they'll set the time and place for elsewhere. And my suggestion would be, somewhere in the heartland of America that better represents the American public.
Right smack dab in the middle of the country. Put it in Iowa or Kansas.
Exactly. And I'm a little bit partial to Oklahoma City. Tom Coburn's a big supporter. So.
There you go. So anything else, Alan?
Yeah, just where would the funding come from? How would these delegates be paid, or will they be paid, or will each state fund their own? How does that work?
Generally speaking, our history is that each state funds their own. It's done on a state-by-state basis. Generally, the states will get together and fund their own delegates coming together.
See, this could be a long-lasting situation. This could go on for a long time.
Yeah, is there a time limit for it?
I expect at a minimum it would take several months.
So are you saying that these people, all these delegates, will be in one place working this out for several months?
Yeah, who knows? They may travel back and forth like D.C. legislators, but I expect, it's going to take them anywhere between 60 and 90 days to work this stuff out and come to a resolution. You got some pretty serious debates that need to take place.
Yep.
Even on a balanced budget amendment, if they all agree we need one, well, what's the form and function of that balanced budget amendment?
Exactly.
That takes time for folks to work out.
All right. Alan, anything else?
Yeah, will any of these proposed amendments, be written before the convention starts?
I think you will. I think what will happen is, I'm guessing that once the convention is called, people will start jockeying and preparing their own amendments. I imagine you'll end up with organizations that support particular amendments. So I expect that delegates are going to come from their states with particular amendments in their pockets. This is generally the way these things work. People don't come in just cold and blind. They are prepared when they come in. I think that's really healthy for the process. We're going to see a lot of stuff laid on the table and then a lot of debate about it.
Now, I bet you can find some of these amendments already in existence in the slush pile of amendments that politicians run on during election season but get thrown on the trash heap because they're impossible to pass in the real
absolutely. And in fact, if you read Mark Levin's book, he's proposed 11 of them, what he calls the Liberty Amendments. I'm sure A lot of folks will bring those to the table. And so, yeah, I think they're going to bring a lot of amendments. I think that convention is going to start with a whole pile of amendments.
Thanks, Alan.
No, can we get C-SPAN to televise this convention?
Oh. I certainly hope so, and I think they'll want to. It'll be up to the convention to set its own rules, but I, for one, would be for a wide-open convention. I think it would be great for the American public at large to see and be involved in that.
Alan, thanks, man. We're up against a break. We'll be right back. Mark Meckler is going to stay with us for about another 15, 20 minutes. And if you have a question or a comment, now's the time. 721-1290. We'll be right back. This is Talkback, and we're rolling right along on this Friday, and we are very privileged to have Mark Meckler joining us. He's in California right now, but coming back to Montana.
And he was here last week, and that's what I wanted to ask him about. So apparently, Mark, I assume you were kind of petitioning various legislators about this, lobbying, if you will. I don't know if that's technically what you were doing or not, but trying to get this Convention of States project passed. And I wanted to understand or get from you what the feedback was from the legislators in Helena.
Sure, yeah, that is what I was doing. I was over at the Capitol. By the way, having traveled the country, I got to tell you guys have one of the most beautiful Capitol buildings in the country.
Oh, thank you.
Really impressive. And the other thing that I took note of, and I had my 16-year-old daughter with me, and we were both really impressed. The Capitol itself, and watching the legislature, it's really a citizen legislature. It's what the founders intended that we have at the legislature. So it's impressive to watch it and to meet the folks in the legislature, real citizens actually doing a civic duty. So I was impressed, and the response was good. It was really interesting. I think the most interesting thing is they'd been hearing a lot of the fear-mongering and the stuff from folks saying, oh, we should be scared, and they hadn't heard the arguments about why there was no reason to be scared, why there couldn't be a runaway convention. And so what we saw is a lot of people who had a lot of fear, and then when they heard the rational arguments, Montanans tend to be pretty logical, rational folks, and so what I saw was a lot of lights going on, like, wow, we really can do this, it really is safe, and we really ought to do this. I saw a lot of change over there as we walked the halls.
Yeah, and a lot of people should recognize, we have in Montana a legislature that meets every 2 years, but that's not the same way. And also we have a legislature, it is basically made up of working people that have regular jobs and then go away to do their legislative activities for a few months and then come back to regular life. But in California, I understand things are quite different. Is that right, Mark?
We have a full-time legislature. They pass over 750 pieces of legislation every year. It's just an absolute disaster. I mean, you can see the results every day.
Yeah, can you imagine if you were a business having to deal with, what's new this week? I mean, that's basically the climate there, as far as I understand it.
It is, and that's why so many businesses and productive people have voted with their feet and gone to other states. And my only hope and fear is that they don't pollute other states within California.
Well, yeah. Well, let's get Eric on the line. Eric is back, and go ahead, Eric.
Yeah. In my mind, it's insane to say that the Constitution, one, that the Constitution is open for interpretation, and two, that errant interpretations are indeed following the Constitution. If I applied your logic to any other principle, I'd be called a nut. The principles of logic are universal. And if I applied this to, let's say, the Bible, you could make the Bible say that Jesus is God and is not God at the same time, and then say they're both legitimate.
Hey, Eric, let me ask you a question, though. Aren't there people who do that? Aren't there entire churches based around that kind of theology?
I can't hear him.
He asked, aren't there churches like that are based on that same type of theology?
Well, yeah, they're in our circles, in Reform circles, we call them Vantillians. And they
okay, so here's the deal. They're wrong.
Analogy.
They're wrong.
The thing is that they're false.
Okay. You're both speaking at once. So Mark, make your point. Go ahead.
Yeah. So Eric just acknowledged my point. Those people exist. They're wrong. He can call them insane. I'm not calling names. They're wrong. They exist. They create these interpretations, and people live by them. That's what has happened with our Constitution. I agree with them. It's crazy. It shouldn't be this way.
I still can't hear
but
him.
It is this way.
But you'll have to hang up the phone and listen on the radio, Eric. I'm sorry.
We have to acknowledge the reality that this does exist. Unfortunately, that's the situation we're living under right now.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So 721-1290 is our number, 1-800-568-5309. Mark Meckler joining us, the Convention of States. And now, as you work toward this, where will you be heading after you leave Montana?
So from, let's see, I'll be early in the week. I'll be in Missouri. Then I go to Montana, and from Montana, I'm off to Utah.
Okay, so I'm assuming that all of these states are meeting in their legislative sessions approximately the same time. Is that right?
Yeah, that's correct. I think at this point we've got 49 legislatures in session. I forget. There's one that starts a little bit later, but almost all of them are in right now.
You are fading out a little bit, just so you know. I don't know if you can put your mouth closer to the
right on top of the
receiver there.
That would be great.
Anyway, we got another call. Charles is on the phone.
Yeah, we're almost up against.
Oh, should we go to a break first?
Let's take our break, because I want to give Charles plenty of time to make his point. I don't want to cut him off. And Mark has very graciously agreed to be with us for another 10 minutes or so, and we'll be right back. Yeah, 721-1290 is the number. It's Friday. Just a few more minutes with Mark Meckler, and I want to get as many callers in as we can. So, Charles, you are on with Mark. Please go ahead, sir.
Okay, Mark, I just want to give you a suggestion of maybe what could be put in a amendment to the Constitution if you do that. You've got quite a bit of respect for Montana, so this thinking comes from Montana Code Anointed 71106.
I think it's annotated, not anointed.
Anointed is good, though.
Annotated. The powers of the town, and you can say the state then, see? The town shall have all powers possible for a self-government town under the Constitution and laws of this state as fully and completely as though they were specifically enumerated in this charter. Construction. The powers of the town under this charter shall be construed liberally in favor of the town. Now, you'd say state, right? And the specific mention of particular powers in the charter shall not be construed as limiting in any way the general power stated in this article. Now, here's the clincher. Every reasonable doubt as to the existence of a local government power, see as a state power or authority, shall be resolved in favor of the existence of that power or authority. At the present time, what it seems to be is they say if there's any doubt, it goes to the federal government.
That's the supremacy clause, right?
So it's basically when in doubt, side with the states would be the...
Right.
Okay.
All right. Thanks, Charles.
What do you think, Mark?
What do you think about that?
I loved it. I mean, I think that actually reflects the philosophy by which the Constitution was drafted. And so, but Charles is correct. You know, we've drifted away from that, and it seems like all the power by presumption resides in the federal government. And really what he's sort of summarizing for me is what I said. I hope that the main sort of magic amendment would be, obviously I'm being facetious, which is the no really amendment, because the original founders did intend that only a small amount of specifically enumerated powers would reside with the federal government, and that everything else not mentioned or everything not specified was either with the states or the people.
But Mark,
it sounds like Montana did a great job of putting that in your annotated code.
Mark, if they did that though, then they wouldn't be able to take care of us all from cradle to grave. See?
Well, he says it's magic. The caller says it's anointed. I guess there's a certain glow around it.
One thing that I think is so important in what was just said there is the word self-government was there. You know, my organization is Citizens for Self-Governance. This country was founded on the concept of self-governance. That means it starts with the person, the self,
Yep.
at the level of personal responsibility.
Okay, let's get Susan on. Susan, thank you for holding. You're on with Mark Meckler. Go ahead.
Well, my first question is the traveling that you're doing and the organization that you're doing takes a lot of time. It sounds like you're a young man with potentially a young family. Who pays your salary? Who pays for your time? Who pays for your airline tickets?
Okay, so Mark, how are you funded, Mark?
Well, I like when you say I'm a young man. That makes me feel good. I'm actually 53 years old. And the organization that pays for all of that is called Citizens for Self-Governance. We're a grassroots organization. And via fundraising, we have over 10,000 grassroots donors all over the country that fund the organization and pay for all the stuff that we do.
Does that help you, Susan?
Yeah, and then the follow-up question is, what exactly are you trying to accomplish by changing the U.S. Constitution? Is it an attempt to turn all power over to the states and to defederalize the entire government, or is it something else?
The intent is to return it to the balance as structured by the founders. It was a beautiful balance that they created. And the break in the balance, people talk about separation of powers in America, and what we focus on nowadays is between the branches, the executive, legislative, and judicial. That's what we call the horizontal separation of powers. But what the founders were even more focused on was vertical separation, the separation of power between the federal government and the states, and ultimately the states as representatives of the people. So what we're attempting to do is restore that balance, to put the federal government back into the limited sphere that it was contained in. It was originally contained in the Constitution. It's broken out of those chains, and they're just parchment, and they haven't been enforced. So our goal is to drive it back into the bounds of the original Constitution.
Okay, let's get one more call in before we let you go. Mike, you are on with Mark Meckler. Go ahead.
Yeah, good morning, Mark. Good luck on this. I'm all for it, but your biggest problem, as I see it, because I've ran into this more than once here in the state of Montana, at least 75 to 80% of the people you're going to talk to have never read the Constitution, and they will argue to the day they die on something they have never read. So you got a hard road to hoe, but good luck on it. I went through this, and it's with the state Constitution. At least 70 to 80% people have never read our state Constitution. So I'm just saying good luck. I think you're on the right path.
All right, thanks, Mike. Appreciate that. So what do you say to that, Mark?
I don't know if Mike's numbers are right, but he's certainly right. Not enough people read the Constitution, especially the state Constitution.
Yeah.
But the hopeful note is more people today in the United States of America are physically in possession of a Constitution than ever before in the history of the United States. Lots of good organizations giving out free constitutions, from Heritage to Cato to NCCS. And so people are getting it, people are getting interested, and that's really, really important. I'd like to close with this, which is this is going to happen, but it's only going to happen if people get involved, because it's only the people that can make this happen. This is not about politicians. It's not about special interest groups. This is, in Article 5, it says the people can rise up as the sovereign citizens of the United States of America and reclaim their government. If folks want to do that, they're in Montana. You need to call your state legislator and let them know to support the Convention of State Resolution. That's really important. The number one thing your listeners can do, pick up the phone, call your representative, call your senator, tell them to support it. It's going to be in committee next week on the 3rd. We need to get it out of committee and then get it onto the floor. Only you guys can do it. And if you want to know more, go to conventionofstates.com. All the information is there, pros and cons. If you want to see both sides of the argument, we air them equally so you can see them there. Again, conventionofstates.com.
Great, Mark. Thanks so much.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Appreciate it. We look forward to talking with you again.
And I'm posting the draft. This is the Montana Legislature's the bill that they're looking at, SJ7.
Okay. All right.
You can find it on our Facebook page and read about what they'll actually be considering on the 3rd.
And in case you don't know, the number to get a hold of any legislator, and I have done this the last couple of days, and the staff that answers this number at 406-444-4800, they are really on top of it. And when they say they're going to get a legislator to call you back, they do. And they actually take a note and personally deliver it to the person. If they're in session, if they're in committee, they hand it right to them and it make them acknowledge that they've received that note with your message and your phone number. And our legislature isn't so big and huge that you can't have that personal touch, and I really appreciate that. So we're going to take a little break, come right back, 721-1290, 1-800-568-5309. We're coming right back. And our numbers are 721-1290, 1-800-568-5309, or you can make your comments known on our Facebook page. So there you go.
It might be dirtier than poop, but apparently the Keystone XL pipeline passed the Senate yesterday.
Yes, it did. The vote was 62-36. Now, in this particular vote, I did check, and both Steve Daines and John Tester did vote for the bill. So John Tester was against the bill, and now he's for the bill.
Well, he was always for the bill.
Yeah.
He was for the filibuster as well, though.
All right.
Now, the filibuster, just so you know, basically, filibuster stops conversation on a bill. I guess in many ways it's the opposite. It stops voting on a bill and makes it go back to the conversation mode, right?
Okay.
So he when he was talking about why he voted to filibuster the bill, not let it go through the Senate, the reason why was because they needed more time to talk about amendments. So I called his office in Missoula yesterday and I said, hey, it looks like Senate just passed Keystone XL. I want to know if any of the amendments that, one of the big ones that Tester was trumpeting was this amendment to make it so that oil that comes down the pipeline would end up in America, wouldn't be exported. Other ones that were considered was one by Al Franken that makes sure all the steel that goes into it was manufactured by the the American Steel Union,
right,
or whatever.
Yeah.
So anyway, but apparently like none of those made it in. So you got to wonder. So what
was the point?
Well, yeah. What was the point of the filibuster? Did you get what you were gunning for? If he didn't, which it looks like he didn't, then all of the things that I said about it being maybe a smart tactical move, not that great. Because frankly, what's really going to come down to, right, is the president's going to veto it.
Right.
It will come back to the Senate, and then they have to say yay or nay or what they're going to do with it. And
they need 66 votes to override the veto, and it passed 62 to 36. So somewhere they need to come up with 4 more Democrats to vote for it.
Right. So basically the only way to get this through is to, A, convert Democrats somehow. Probably not going to happen. Number 2, amend the bill and include a bunch of pork for Democrat states so that you can get Democrats.
Oh, I see. Yeah,
that's likely.
Bribe them, basically, right?
This happens all the time.
Yeah, I know.
And then the third way is to have another election and kick some people out of office,
which we will have in 2 years.
But
or
a lot.
Year and a half,
but frankly, I don't believe in the next election cycle there's that many that are at risk. One of the ones that is at risk is already in support of Keystone XL. That would be John Tester.
Right. Yeah. Now, please remember that the presidential election is coming up in 2016, and the Keystone XL pipeline, as important as many people think it is not the only thing on the horizon. However,
although the House and Senate have said it's job number 1.
Yeah, that's true. But let's say Hillary Clinton is elected president, which I believe if she runs, she will be.
I don't agree with you, but
okay. People said I was crazy when I said that Barack Obama would win his second term, and he did. So anyway, if Hillary Clinton is elected president, you can pretty much bank on the fact that she will veto it again.
Why do you think that? I think she would be much more likely to pass it than Barack.
I don't believe so.
Why?
Because she'll be able to go back to her liberal roots. And anyway, that's just my opinion.
Maybe I'm wrong on that. Maybe you can call me out on this, but I think that when you look, and I think when Democrats look at Hillary and Barack Obama, they look at Hillary Clinton as coming from the business wing of the Democratic Party.
All right.
Having far more, and frankly, her husband, for all of his many faults, many of which involve women, this is a guy that actually did make deals. This is a guy that sat down, crossed the aisle in many ways, signed welfare reform and multiple other things. Yes, he was brought to, but remember, the House and the Senate, there were less Republicans in the House when he did that,
right,
than the current situation. Okay. You do not see the same kind of cross the aisle work that you saw with Bill Clinton, with Barack Obama. And I think you probably are more likely to see it with Hillary Clinton than Barack Obama.
Well, let's get back to the phones. Let's say good morning to James. Hey, James, what's up?
Yes, I was just wanting to mention that if we're not going to abide by the one now, like Obama keeps breaking the rules and kind of dictating, how do we know when we change the Constitution to a better way of thinking that the people in power in Washington are going to abide by those?
Well, that's exactly the point that Elena made in her Facebook post. Yeah, if they're not obeying it now, why should they obey it in the future?
But I think that argument is kind of, well, I'm just going to say it's kind of stupid. Okay. And the reason why it's kind of stupid,
James. Okay,
is because most of our amendments actually are the areas of the Constitution that are better followed than others. When we specifically, when you put the letters on the page, the amendments, for the most part, I mean, we don't have Jim Crow laws, we don't have slavery, we don't have, we're allowed to to go out and buy a beer now because they changed that part of, I mean, it seems to me that when you do things by the amendment process, that it is much more likely that the government will follow along with it. The Supreme Court will have a harder time squirreling out of it.
What do you guys think? 721-1290, 1-800-568-5309. We're up against a break, so go ahead.
Well, and furthermore, I'll call Elena out on this one since she's the one that's out there. I mean, you can't just say, it's broken, it's broken, it's broken. It sounds like you're standing on the side of the road with your car broken tire, and you're just yelling at it. It's broken. The system is cracked. It's broken. Well, let's put a new tire. No, don't put a tire on it. We could break it.
The tire might not be round. Anyway, we'll take a break. We'll come back. 721-1290. 2 lines open. John's on line 1. We have 2 other lines open just for you if you have a comment. We'll be right back. Oh, yeah. 721-1290 is a number. 1-800-568-5309. I don't know where that all came from, but there you go. That's
what's with the country western?
That's John King. Yeah, it's just popped out. All right.
Now Peter has ridden a horse before, so I'll give him. He has some country cred.
I do. So I used to own a horse.
That's far more country than I have.
A retired cutting horse named Mickey. Mm-hmm. That I got from Edgar Brown out in Silver Star.
That your mom punched in the face, right?
No, that was a different one. All right, let's. I'll tell that story someday. Let's get Brad on the line. Good morning, Brad. How are you?
I'm finer than frog's hair. How are you today?
Yeah, I love that expression. Go ahead. What's up?
Frog's hair. That's great. I've never heard that before.
Finer than frog's hair. You bet.
Well, I commend the gentleman for attempting to restore the Constitution and giving it back to the public. But the system is fundamentally flawed, in my opinion. You have 100 choices of potato chips, 100 choices of candy bars, 100 choices of soda pops, 100 choices of cigarettes, but you have 2 political parties which have one common denominator. They are all belong to a fraternal order of Freemasonry. So until you remove the fraternal brotherhood from each elected post at the state and federal level, nothing's ever going to change.
So I take it that you see the Freemasons as a kind of conspiratorial control of the U.S. government.
Now, you can call me a conspiracy theorist or whatever, but
okay, I guess I will. But let me ask you this:
actually assassinated by them for not following the game plan.
Let me ask you this:
when you have when you have a fraternal order running both political parties which lean on each other, and you don't see much difference between the 2 political parties, I think there's something wrong.
You don't see much difference between the Republican and the Democratic parties.
Pardon me?
You don't see much difference between the Republican and Democratic parties.
I see a change of face, and that's about all I see.
So,
they both are corporate sponsored.
Well, that's true. I mean, there are similarities, but I would say the differences are easier to find than the similarities. I mean, just look at the bills that they fight over. They have very strong differences of opinion on almost everything.
Well, it sure makes a good television show to watch if it looks like that they're actually against each other. But for the most part, they're making backroom deals. And I do believe that there needs to be some fresh blood. The Tea Party, Ron Paul, a constitutional party that wants to get back to the Constitution. And the way I see it is, if the elected gentleman belongs to a fraternal order that's secret, that we are not entitled to know about, then
let me ask you this question: do you like George Washington?
Yeah. George Washington was a founding father, and he was a Freemason.
That's
as well.
true. He was a Freemason. I know this because I found my grandfather had this old picture of, it was like really old, 1700s old, of George Washington and Freemasonry. And it was a weird picture with all the mysterious symbols and stuff like that. I was fascinated by it when I was a kid. But so how do you deal with that? I mean, if the founding father the first president of the United States was a Freemason, how do you have any love for the Constitution and the founding fathers that birthed it?
And not only that, but how many members of the Constitutional Convention and those who authored the Constitution and those who voted it and ratified it were also members of Freemasons?
Yeah, that's great, fine and dandy, but everything they do is in secret, and you have them in elected offices and elected posts from the head of the federal level all the way down to the state level, and if they're doing things in secrecy, what are they doing in secrecy? Are they doing backroom deals? Are they not making a difference in the government for the best benefits of the people?
I guess that's why it's secret.
Exactly.
All right. Well,
you made my point. Thank you very much.
Thanks for the call. Emmett, you're on Talkback.
I'll just go on a limb here and say, I think secret stuff would happen without the Freemasons.
Yeah. Anyway, Emmett, you're on Talkback. Go ahead.
Well, thanks for taking my call. Wow, Brad's call just now was fantastic. I completely agree with him. I wasn't going to talk about that, but that was one of the best calls we've ever had. I completely agree with Brad, and I think that's been a big problem with our political system. But I'm sure you've already heard at the top of the hour, and I was watching CNN for a few minutes. There's some good news. I want to kind of shift gears and open up a can of worms, and a lot of people are not going to like what I have to say.
Yeah, Mitt's out.
I am thrilled that Mitt Romney will not run for 2016.
Well,
I think we need new blood.
Well,
I was
he
never
lost.
happy with Mitt.
Yeah, he lost twice. I mean, to run 3 times is silly.
Yeah, I was
I
was
thought he only
commenting
run
off the air. He was trying to be the Republican William Jennings Bryan there for a second.
Yeah, for some reason I only thought he ran once, this one last time. I had never heard of Mitt Romney. That's kind of odd, but okay, well, I'm glad he's not running. I never trusted the guy.
Well, I will tell you what I heard, Emmett. I heard a Democratic strategist on one of the news shows saying, "Ooh, we can't wait for Mitt to run. We beat him twice already. We'll just drag out all the old stuff we had before and resurrect it and beat him again."
The Democrats are like, man, can you imagine if Mitt Romney run? That would be just horrible. That'd be like running Hillary.
yeah, I can imagine, and I think that's a good thing. But I never trusted the guy. He always etch-a-sketched himself and made a whole bunch of, false promises. Like, I'm a good politician. I'm here to help you.
Well, if you never hold the office you're trying to get to, you don't know if there are false promises, right?
Yeah, and I never liked. He even admitted. Remember in that Republican fundraiser, he admitted that those were his comments about the poor and the entitlements. And
well, it was on record. I mean,
somebody's
Mr.
iPhone.
Carter's son had recorded the conversation. The 40, I think it's called the 47% comment, right?
yeah,
Basically,
yeah. But
I know that 47% of the people won't vote for me. So.
And he didn't apologize. I just think we need somebody else, especially if Hillary.
He has apologized for the comment.
Well, he did. He really didn't. He said, "I could have said it a little bit better, but I stand by those words." He never said, "I wished I had never said those."
So now, hold on. What did you say about Hillary?
We need someone stronger than Mitt Romney if Hillary decides to win.
Oh, I see.
Run.
Yes,
if Hillary decides to run, we can't have Mitt Romney and have the choice of these two horrible. So this has really made my day and made me a lot happier.
Well, there you go.
Well,
Thanks.
Let me go here.
Thanks,
I will agree with our caller here. I think that Mitt Romney running would be. I don't know if it'd necessarily be bad for everyone involved because I don't think he would make it through the primary this time. I think enough people just kind of have the old shoe feel about Mitt Romney.
Been there, done that.
Yeah.
And many actually got the T-shirt. So
one guy got a tattoo on his face.
And the bumper sticker and everything. So it's Catherine, if you'll hang on, we got to take a 1-minute time out and we'll come right back. We have about 8 minutes left in the program. Kind of freewheeling here through the last half hour. If there's something that we didn't cover that you want to get out before the weekend, give us a call. Hey, it's Friday, and the fog is lifting, quite literally.
That's because Peter and I have been practicing our secret handshakes.
There you go.
All right, let's been able to negotiate with the weather.
Secret, man. What's the matter with you? God,
no one can see the handshake.
Bend over. I have to spank you with the official paddle. Okay, Catherine. Hi, Catherine. You're on Talkback. Hi.
Hi. How are you today?
We're fine, but don't tell anybody.
Hold on. Let me read my transcript. Yes, we're fine today.
Okay.
Oh, wait, where are my talking points? I got to find my talking points. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Okay. Well, vis-a-vis the Masons, of course, the Masonic Lodge is also, or the Shriners Club is also part of the Masonic Lodge. That's at a certain level.
Right.
And they, of course, are very involved in medical issues.
Well, the Shriners Hospital, they do an awesome job with that.
Exactly. Well, one of the main members of the Masonic Lodge back in the day, there's a little historical tidbit, was Ben Franklin, one of the writers of the Declaration of Independence.
Also, sometimes a little bit of a creepy guy.
Yeah,
I'll be
honest.
honest.
Was affiliated with the Hellfire Club. Or at least, in London when he was the U.S. ambassador to the Court of St. James.
Maybe a little dirty.
Clinton-esque
escapades. Let's just say
the Hellfire Club, but it was an interesting.
He was a colorful character.
Yes.
But anyway, what I called about is Loretta Lynch. Did you know that she was born in 1959 and she went to Harvard, I believe, in 1977 when she was 18?
So people know she's the Attorney General nominee that's being considered right now.
Right. She founded the first African-American sorority, and there was one other member of the sorority by the name of Sarah Malone. And Eric Holder's wife is named Sarah, and her maiden name is Malone. She graduated in 1981 from Harvard. So I thought that was an interesting possible connection.
How about that?
Coincidence. Now, did you dredge this up yourself, or did you find it on a website? I'm just curious.
I dredged it up myself.
That is impressive,
Catherine.
Well, you can
Amazing.
just go back and get the alumni.
Catherine, the political sleuth.
All right.
Hey, we got to get some more calls.
Thanks
in.
for your call.
Right.
Thank
Sure,
you very
bye.
much, Catherine. Always a pleasure. Roger, you're on Talkback. Go.
Yes, sir. Regarding the Masons here, I think some people are just a little misinformed. I'm a 32nd degree Mason.
Got to whisper, Roger. Got to whisper. Sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I'm being fun. Go ahead, please. Please go ahead.
So Roger, you're a 32nd degree Mason. What do you think? What do you feel like when you hear people talking about the Masons in the way the kind of conspiratorial tenor that they have? By the way, we actually had an anti-Masonic party here in the United States for a while, so this isn't a new thing.
Yes, we did. Anyway, there's thousands of books, written on Masonry and everything, and read them all. You probably know more than me, but we get a lot of old wives' tales. There's a lot of misconceptions, whatever. But remember that 16 of our presidents have been Masons. The last one was Jerry Ford, and most of the defenders at the Alamo, Davy Crockett, Bowie, and Travis, they were Masons. And the original officer corps, the Rough Riders, they were all Masons, starting with, Theodore and all. So they have a lot to do with our history.
So tell me, what made you want to be a Mason? I'm curious.
Mainly
Or
my
is it something you get
family,
invited to?
My uncle / godfather, he was a Mason, and I kind of got left on the doorstep, so to speak, and Masonic Lodge kind of took me in and, gave me a home.
Now, Roger, please correct me if I'm wrong, but I remember when I was in my teens that my brother and I were recruited to become into the D-Malay organization. Is that like a precursor of being a Mason?
Yes, it is. As a matter of fact, my dad was a D-Malay,
Okay.
and he never went into Masonry because after the war ended, he got pretty sick, and it took him about 5 or 6 years to recover.
Okay.
But you're right about that. But like I said, MacArthur, Audie Murphy, and a few other guys like that.
And the women's auxiliary is that Job's daughters?
Yes, that's an affiliation
Okay.
also.
All right. Gotcha. Okay. I just want, because my grandmother was a Job's daughter.
Okay, so I got to ask you, what's with all the weird symbolism and the secret stuff? Do you feel like that's hurting the cause of the Masons, or do you treasure it as part of your history, or how do you feel all those things?
Well, those all go back to King Solomon and his followers. That's, where Masonry evolved. Like they say, Masonry is not a religion. We are defined as a selective social fraternity based on the Bible.
And so somebody has to be invited to attend, right?
Well, you have to ask to be one, know a Mason, and ask them, and they'll get a petition, and you go through the background and all that kind of stuff.
Okay.
But anyway, getting back to the secret societies and all that, the U.S. Constitution does say that you cannot have a secret organization in the United States. Masonry is an organization of secrets. Now, that may sound like a little play on words or something, but the Constitution says no secret organizations, but Masonry is an organization of secrets.
All right.
Like the handshakes, the symbols, a certain this, a certain that.
Okay, Roger, we got to get one more call in.
Okay, very good. Well, thank you, sir.
Thanks for
Appreciate it.
calling. We appreciate it.
Color
And-
me bemused and confused.
All right. Well, let Dave. We about a minute and a half. Go ahead, sir.
Oh, okay. Well, first of all, I think Santa Ana was also a Mason. But at any rate, I called about something else.
Wow. All right.
Last night, Hannity, whatever his first name is, Sean.
Sean.
Okay, he had this couple of people on, and there's this petition out there. 105,000 signatures have already signed on. They do it online. Okay. Well, at any rate, it's about this lieutenant that was convicted of shooting back at the Taliban over there in Afghanistan.
Okay.
And, if we can't support our junior officers and our senior officers and our mid-level officers, we're not going to have any officers. And so I think that what's going on there is the Judge Advocate General's Corps is acting as commissars did in the Red Army to tell field officers what to do when these commissars don't have the
Right, I understand.
the training. And so if we're going to leave the war up to attorneys, I think we're going to lose every damn one of them. The wars we get into, that is to say.
All right, well, we sure appreciate your call. Thanks, Dave.
Okay, bye.
Appreciate that. All right, there you go. We have less than a minute left in the show, and we've had a Borgeshmord, if you will, of comments, and we appreciate all of you. You're all welcome, and we give equal time to everybody. So sometimes more than equal time to everybody. So what's coming up on tomorrow's or make that Monday's fabulous
Monday.
program? Yeah,
the best day of the week, apparently.
Dang straight, baby.
We'll have Kay Heimowitz on. She's a Manhattan Institute scholar. I'll read to you some of the titles of her works. Okay?
Real quick, yeah.
Marriage and Caste in America, Separate and Unequal Families in Post-Marital Age.
Wow.
Manning Up, How the Rise of Women Has Turned Men into Boys.
Wow.
And Liberation's Children, Parents and Kids in a Postmodern Age. Anyway, she talks about family and U.S. family structures.
You guys have a great weekend, and we will talk to you Monday. Please don't forget to turn your lights off after you're driving through the fog.